Hey guys. Let's see. Okay. I thought for a minute I was like, oh no, is my mic not working? It's always something. Um, Yay, awesome. Thank you, Druid. Yeah, it's always something. I Jill and I streamed our Stitch and Glitch this weekend, and it never fails. I have to undo microphone blocks and all this junk everywhere, so it's crazy. One day I'll get it all connected in a way that I can just push a button. Because I know that's possible. So anyway, happy Monday, you guys. Hey JB, Miss Rawl, it is so good to see you. I'm glad you have a meeting-free afternoon so you can make it. And JB, oh my gosh, that absolutely stinks to not have power. Ugh. I've been there. My power went out the other day. Luckily it was just for a little bit, but yeah, it's when it catches you off guard, when it's not expected. Oh lordy. Oh yeah, an internet. I was gonna say I could probably go without power. We had a situation, oh gosh, it's been over 10 years ago. It was 2010 maybe, 2013, I can't remember. Yeah, I think it was 2010. Anyway, there was a big snowstorm here it was around the Super Bowl time, and we ended up going, there was infrastructure in Baltimore's kind of crappy, and we ended up without water. We had power, but no water for like 7 days, and that was rough. And I just remember thinking to myself, the two things that are most important in my life, I can do without air conditioning. I can do without heat. I mean, I have a wood stove. I can strip down. But I gotta have water, and I gotta have the internet. Like, I just can't. So I feel your pain. I'm glad that you're back up and running. If I remember correctly, you're in Northern California. So I don't know. Not sure how cold it is up there right now, but just in general, glad you got it all together. And you were just traveling too, right, JB? Didn't you say you were going to London? So I'm very glad you're here, and I'm glad that you are squared away. Nothing like trying to prep for the holidays and everything just goes to hell. So might be kind of a quick day. I have to travel this evening, and it's nothing bad. It's just a family thing I have to take care of, and have to go to Virginia. It's about a 2-hour drive. So gas, yes. Oh yes. We have gas, hot water, and a gas stove. And yeah, I always feel like at least I can, with water, I can have hot water. You could, if there's the electric ignitions, nobody needs that. You could get down there with a lighter. I think I would probably be okay, given the zombie apocalypse, as long as I had water, because water, water, and I think I can make fire. I think I know how to make fire. Anyway, I don't know if I'm a person you want with me during the zombie apocalypse, but I have a few skills. All right. So, a few little bits of this and that, just sort of a potpourri of things. First of all, I'm going to switch to my other screen because, okay. You guys remember this from the other day? This amazing, I think they have it listed as a quilt top, but I think it's like a summer spread or just a bedspread. I think it's finished around the edges. So I think it definitely was in a position to be used. Anyway, there were 39 bids, and it went for $2,083. I want to say when we looked at it, it was probably, I think it was in the mid to high 1,000s when we looked at it. So it had a few more bids. Amazing. It's just, we spent some time looking at this, so I won't get into it too deeply, but a really interesting piece, very different looking in a lot of aspects than we're used to looking at. And it's just always so fun to look at these things. It's definitely chintz, but kind of, they just did something a little bit different than a lot of chintz quilts and spreads that we see. So had to show you that. Now, the next thing to show you, I had been meaning to talk about this, and I may have talked about it, but I'm a ding dong. I often don't read newsletters and stuff like I should. I look at them and I'm like, okay, I need to get rid of, get around to reading this. And so I leave it in my mailbox, my email box with like unread. And then after I have like 400 of them, I'm like, oh gosh, I'll never get around to reading these. But the American Quilt Study Group, the journal is called Uncoverings. And, you could purchase a copy from AQSG. You can, you can find them on the secondary market. Some of them are out of print, though. Some of them are not available. But on the Quilt Index, they have, I think, all of them up to like maybe 2000 or 2000 and something. Actually, it might be later than that. It might be like 2018. It's pretty, they have a lot of them. But the challenge with the ones on the Quilt Index, because of copyright reasons, they did not have pictures. So while you could read this fantastic scholarly paper about a quilt or a topic, there were no pictures. And so, it kind of takes away from that. Well, the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, which is a kind of partners with the International Quilt Museum, they are very involved in the quilt world. They have digitized the uncoverings, all of them, and they have made them keyword searchable. So this is incredible for researchers. And I mean, if you're just curious and you want to go look at some quilt topics, I mean, there's just so much interesting stuff, and there's pictures, and it's keyword searchable. So I wanted to show you where this was in case you wanted to poke around in there. The address, which I just realized I have to move the little bar down so you can see it. Okay, the address is Digital Commons, unl.edu. I'll put that in the chat also. So very easy, digitalcommons.unl.edu. This takes you to their Digital Commons collection page, or all the stuff. You want to go to collections, and I think you can also scroll down here to collections, public access. And then, of course, there's a lot. And this is the way, if you have not gotten into collections at, libraries, universities, museums, like this is how this stuff is, what's the word I'm looking for? How it's organized. And it can be confusing for people if you don't know exactly what you're looking at. So this is an alphabetical listing of what they've got, basically. And so this makes it pretty easy. And Uncoverings, or American Quilt Study Group, is what we're looking for. And luckily, American Quilt Study Group, Uncoverings Journal. So click on Uncoverings, and here we go. And literally, you just scroll down. And the PDFs are all there. This is so fantastic. So I had actually, I think I must have closed the one I was looking at. I was looking at one that, here it is, that I think I thought I had, but it appears I do not. So you just download it, and zing, there it is. And so this is what that one looks like. It's the 2020 volume. And I wanted to look at, look at these full color pictures. Now, the older journals don't have full color pictures, but the newer ones do. So isn't this awesome? Like, this is the stuff you would not necessarily have seen. You definitely wouldn't have seen this in the Quilt Index version of these. Not that the Quilt Index is bad, because those are pretty quickly easy to find too and download. And in those, you can actually download just one of the papers. You don't have to download the whole thing. So, but this is so exciting. I mean, it's got all the pictures. It's and it's searchable. It's so great. So this one I actually want. You can see how long these papers are sometimes. This is about a Marseille coverlets, samplers. So this is the one I wanted to look at, which is Nothing Thou Love Be Lost or Die. The 1846 friendship quilt made at the Vermont Asylum for the Insane. And I've talked to Charlene and Bill about this quilt, but and I had skimmed this article at one time, but did not have it in my possession as I thought I did. So this is the quilt. So anyway, I just want to make sure that everybody had, had an awareness that this is out there, totally free. Anybody can look at it. It's pretty freaking awesome. And I mean, there is a wealth of brain power here in these journals. Just about any topic you could think about with quilts is going to be reflected in here. Obviously, the older journals are looking at older quilts, whereas the newer journals are starting to get into, some modern quilting and some contemporary stuff. So, hey, Jen. Yeah. These are, and I feel so stupid. I was like, I mentioned to Jill the other day, I was like, hey, I heard Nancy Bavor, who's the president of AQSG. I was like, I heard her mention the digitizing project. That's done. And Jill's like, yeah, dummy. That's been done for a while. And I was like, oh gosh, I feel like an idiot. So anyway, just wanted to make sure you had access to that because it's some good stuff. So I think that was everything I had to show you on my desktop. My other this and that is really just the ridiculous things that are on my desk, my actual desk. I think I mentioned some of these things, and I just wanted to show them because I hadn't had a chance to put any of this on Instagram. I may never do it. But first of all, my tiny things. So the advent calendar has yielded more tiny things. Still nothing super exciting. I'm still waiting on that JoJo Siwa Barbie head thing. It's probably going to be on the 24th. But today I got an itty bitty. It's a Ren and Stimpy Ren doll. And, Ren and Stimpy was a Nickelodeon thing, but I always thought they were really not appropriate for children. And I watched them when I was, I guess, in college or maybe, I can't remember. It had to have been when I was in college or maybe when I was right out of college. And what's really funny is my mother loved Ren and Stimpy. And if you don't know who Ren and Stimpy are, if you didn't have kids that age or you weren't my age watching Nickelodeon as a young adult, Ren and Stimpy was a cartoon about a cat. Stimpy was the cat. Ren was this chihuahua. And it was all very kind of borderline inappropriate. For sure. Yeah, Ren and Stimpy is the great. So this was an exciting find for me. Anyway, they're totally inappropriate, but like in a borderline kind of way. Like I think younger teenagers, it's kind of like that sort of potty humor kind of stuff. And then I don't even know what this is. Some kind of dinosaur toy. I just love the fact that they're little itty bitty. I mean, they're so good. This company just makes these. They're just so good. I've seen apparently Hasbro has some too. I think they're called the micro smallest toys kind of thing. If you see the games like Itty Bitty Mousetrap, Itty Bitty, Connect 4, Hasbro's, I don't know, it's like some subsidiary of Hasbro has this, and they're just not as good. They aren't like super detailed and carefully painted and accurate looking as these are. And then, how dare these advent calendar makers? They sent me a duplicate. I already had washable markers, but they've sent a duplicate. How dare? I want to speak to their manager. So I have 2 of these. Okay. Now the other fun things I've kind of had sitting on my desk now for a couple weeks, and I need to disperse them to where they belong. But first of all, I know I mentioned this when I was at my mom's, going through some of the stuff she had boxed up from when she had her kitchen redone. And this is like 2015, 2016. She had her kitchen redone. So this is a Snoopy magnet from my childhood. I brought him home. I said, Mom, I'm taking this. And she's like, okay. Like you were ever going to put this Snoopy magnet, this garbagey Snoopy magnet back on your stainless steel refrigerator. So Snoopy. I don't know. There's something just so charming about Snoopy and Peanuts. And I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a variety of generations that know and love Snoopy. He's relatable. I just love him. So he is going to be right here on my filing cabinet. So then I found, you want to see some baby cake? I'm always surprised when I find pictures. because today it's like you're looking on people's phones. This is June 1991. It was my senior dinner dance, and I have covered up the gentleman I went with because he is now law enforcement, and in the very unlikely event that he ever saw this, I don't think he would be happy I showed his face. So I have him marked out. But there is baby cake. I was 17, and my mother took these pictures. I guess it was my mother. None of them turned out well because I'm like, come on, take the picture. We gotta go. And then you could actually see my prom picture is over here. My senior prom, but this was in June, like right before we graduated, or I graduated. He was already graduated. And I found this picture and I was like, oh my God, I look like a baby. And then this one is a picture. I have two different pictures that go along with this, and I don't know where the other one is, but this was October 91 in my my dorm room, and one of my classes was it was like an expressionist class, and so I was doing a lot of chalk pastel projects, and I hate chalk pastels. So Druid, you're gonna recognize my shirt and also the poster behind me. So that's baby cake with chalk pastel all over her face, looking like a lunatic. But I would say that kind of encapsulates who I am today and then in many, many ways. So hopefully that give you guys some smiles. And then finally, my mom, this was in her, like in her desk drawer, and I was like, can I have these? And she's, oh, let's see. There's a Widespread Panic song about Charlie Brown, entitled Charlie Brown. In his heart, he knows that sometimes a dog is as good as any man. Oh my God, yes. Yes. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And a good friend of mine had a beagle who passed away this year. And I know it was very, very, very hard on him. And pets are so important to us. But there's something about dogs. And I'm not a dog person. I've never owned a dog, but I can understand that relationship that people have with their dogs. It's very different than the relationship you have with your cat. Cats are undeniably wonderful pets, but they are different than dogs. So, and it gets me to crying when I see the elderly dogs and all that stuff. So. But anyway, I was going through my mom's desk drawer and I found the stationery from when she had her quilting and kit making business when she was in the 80s. She made small stuffed animals and little felt things along with small quilts. And this was her stationery. And it's the pattern pieces from her bear pattern. And I actually digitized this pattern a few years ago, and I'm still, I still haven't released them in any way, but I just thought this was so cute. And of course she had the envelopes, and it's, it's this brownish colored paper. It's kind of meant to look like craft paper. But in the 80s, this is what the printing place would give you for craft paper. Now I could reproduce these on actual craft paper. So I was thinking of reproducing them for her for like a holiday or something. I don't know. It is so cute, so adorable. So my mommy. I hear you, Druid. Yeah. The two cats we have right now were not my choice. I love them. I love them so much, but technically neither of them were my pets. The little gray one is my son's. I say little gray when he's huge. He's got thunder paws. He's my son's cat. And then our other cat, our girl cat, is actually my husband's cat because we lost my cat in 2016. And I was like, I'm not ready for, I love having pets, but I'm not ready for another one. And come February, my husband said, I kind of brought home a cat. I'm like, oh, Lord. So, yeah, I think pets are really good for you. Oh, JB, I understand. Yeah, when you travel a lot. I think with dogs, you can certainly get pet sitters and somebody to walk them and all that stuff. With cats, I will be honest, I sometimes throw out, I throw out the auto feeder. Just give them a big bowl of water and let them survive for a few days. Luckily, you could do that with cats. Yeah. Aw, Druid. I know. I have whiskers from all my cats that I save. Anytime they shed a whisker, I have a repository for them. So I have many, many cat whiskers. Yeah, I hear ya, Druid. Yeah. It's tough. And I hear people say things like, oh, people care about their pets more than they care about other humans. People will lose their mind over something bad happening to a dog or a cat, but, they don't care about something happening to, a person. And that's not true. That is absolutely not true. But I do kind of understand that, honestly, sometimes our animals are like our children. They are put in a position where they are, they're reliant on us, and much like a child or an elderly person who needs support. And so to me, while I think any kind of tragedy is terrible and anything like that happens to, in my mind, anything that ever happens to children and the elderly is the worst thing in the world. And I put pets in there because they have the same helplessness and dependence that children and elderly folks do. Not to say that people in between those age groups I don't care about, because I do. But when you look at the helplessness of someone, and I put pets in that someone category, it's different. It's different than tragedy happening to the rest of us in a way that, we have a little bit of ability to help ourselves, whereas children and pets don't. So yeah, Druid. They can definitely fill a position for us of that sort of love. The wonderful thing about pets kind of being like children is that they kind of perpetually stay toddlers. They don't grow up and have older kid problems. And those of you that have kids know what I mean. They don't grow up. They're kind of always in that same state, whatever that state is. So anyway, I didn't come in here to be bummer and sad about pets. I love my pets, and we got them my husband got them advent calendar. He yelled at me for having my advent calendar of tiny little toys, and he went and bought our damn cats advent calendars. But they're called Stiff Snacks. And every day I open the little cardboard door and there's a little packet of cat snacks in there. It's like seaweed and salmon or something. They smell horrible, but they like them. So they're enjoying their little advent calendar. And every night when, I'm supposed to be going to bed and they're lining up like, we haven't had our Sniff Snacks. Oh goodness. It's all good times. All right, I am going to, that's enough of this and that. I'm going to jump right into reading because we've got Peru to talk about. And I didn't want to get off track. I thought really briefly about maybe canceling today, but no, it's Monday. And I like this. I liked having this, this organization in my life, having this thing, and I don't like to get off track. So, yeah. So, as a reminder, we are reading The Heritage of Cotton by MDC Crawford, 1924, and MDC Crawford is actually Morris DeCamp Crawford. He's an interesting fellow thus far. He was a fellow at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. So he's a learned fellow. He's got some interesting things to say. Thus far, we have looked at primitive people, prehistoric people, primitive technologies. And in the last chapter, we looked at the Spanish influence. in the New World. Some stuff I think we've know in here is not necessarily historically accurate anymore. I think that even really in recent years, they've, anthropologists and archaeologists and stuff kind of, I don't want to say debunked, but sort of added in information here. So, I can't say that all of this is accurate in terms of history, but, and our friend Dee Marie, who I'm not sure if she's here, but I know she had mentioned to me the other day, like this idea of, Morris is looking at bows and arrows and the tools of the primitive people, of prehistoric people, and how that was really kind of interesting to her to think about that. And sitting back and thinking about it myself, I'm kind of like, well, yeah, the different types of tools, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, weapons. I mean, they're weapons for most likely hunting, but if you got some invaders you need to dispatch, so the spears and clubs are useful too. But how those things, the use of the bow, the sinew on the bow, and how that becomes, whether it's informing spinning, vice versa, I don't know. I think it's the bow and arrow informs spinning, and the prevalence of these tools and weapons versus the absence of them, and the prevalence and absence of spinning. And I'm going to set dyeing aside. He talks about dyeing a lot, and I mean dyeing like changing color, not dyeing like so spinning and weaving are the two things that I really think are super important to look at. Dyeing is, I just kind of put that to the side. I mean, dyeing matters in terms of surface decoration and that kind of stuff, but I think the bottom line, fabric really requires spinning and weaving. It doesn't necessarily require dyeing. So anyway, my long preamble to Morris has some really interesting theories, and I think they're worth a look. So as I said, we're reading the history of cotton. We are on chapter 5, which is Peru. And he did have a few little kind of yucky things to say the other day, which were kind of beliefs of the time. They weren't like super racist, but I throw that warning out here. Remember, we're reading a book from 1924, so just know that might be in there. So, chapter 5, Peru. Not the least interesting phase of the history of fabric arts of pre-Inca Peru is the fact that we may study the technical and artistic development of a single people without the confusion of outside influences or intrusions. No matter what may have been the remote origin of this mysterious people, it is beyond question that their civilization is their own, developed through many centuries in a single environment from the spiritual and material reactions of a people of a common or homogeneous race. It is the most perfect fabric record left by any people in the history of the world. Here, we do not have to rely on conjecture, traditions, or the comparison of related arts, but may study in all their variety the actual fabrics, tools, and implements, and through these safely reconstruct the processes and methods. No people in the history of fabrics in any part of the world have ever achieved such a high technical skill, nor excelled them in a conception of design, composition, or the use of color. Beyond question, the most ancient specimens of cotton fabrics in all the world are those found in the desert graves of pre-Inca Peru. They may even be older than the earliest mention of cotton in the records of India, which occurs in the first millennium before the Christian era, although not older than the first actual appearance of cotton fabric in the East, which naturally precedes its first literary mention by many centuries. So it sounds like he's still kind of sticking with India and cotton cultivation. However, the Peruvians quite likely had better. They're better at it. I don't know how else to say that. Okay, I forgot to put my camera up again, but I'll hold these up. So the pictures 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are an Aztec chief, an Aztec noble, Aztec women. So they're all wearing cotton garments and robes. So that's this row of people at the top. And I mean, considering these dates, those are pretty, those are pretty detailed. So these are from Codex. Yeah, these are from different codices. But I would say that, these are all really interesting look at these things. I don't know for sure if these were when these codices are from, because he doesn't have dates on these. So number 5 is oldest cotton tapestry found within the limits of the United States, from Grand Gulch, Utah. And this looks like it's a fragment. So it's this right here. Oh, there goes something I had inside the book. Let's see. Next one is number 6, Aztec 2-barred loom from Mexico. You can see the person using the loom. I guess it's up against a tree, I think. They're using the branches as a connection point, or let's see, number 7. These are cotton blankets or shawls paid as tribute from ancient Mexico. It's a very tiny picture. Can't really see much there. Let's see, number 9. Well, where's number 8? Oh, number 8 are terracotta stamp and cylinders for printing paper and cloth from ancient Mexico. That's pretty cool. I wish he had bigger pictures of that. So that's those right here. They're stamps. And then number 9 is a detail of a Hopi bride's cotton robe. Another one I wish we had a better picture of, but you can see that beautiful woven detail there. I bet it was really lovely in full color. Number 10 is modern cotton jacket with interwoven feather pattern of the type mentioned by Columbus, San Blas Indians. And that's that one. Looks like a really cool woven design. Number 11 is a prehistoric incense bowl. Central America, with design executed in resist dyeing. So here's that dyeing stuff that matters when you're being decorative. I think I've seen some incense bowls like that on Amazon. Let's see, number 12. A prehistoric stenciled cotton and knitted cotton garment from cliff-dwelling Canyon de Chelly, Arizona. So it's not much more than a fragment left of that. But it looks like, I don't know, this is some kind of, I guess it's just fragmentary. And then this final one is a Maya woman wearing designed cotton costume, Yaxchilan Maya art. So there she is. I would be mad at the artist because I would be like, bro, you made me look like I had a sloping forehead and I'm super fat. All right. So he has said that there may be... so Peru is not older than the first appearance of cotton, but maybe more skilled, I guess. Or I guess earlier mentions. I don't know. He's kind of giving us some mixed messages here about Peru and India. So, hey, Jan. Good to see you. All right. So it is impossible, however, to give any reliable dates for this great civilization. Wondering if they have nailed that down better, the Incas and the Mayas. I'm not sure. We can only gain some comprehension of its antiquity by a comparison with our own historic experiences. Roughly speaking, the people conquered by Pizarro in 1532 and known as Incas were at about the same cultural level as our own European ancestors of the 12th century. Our ancestors indeed excelled in the knowledge of iron and steel, but the Incas were infinitely more advanced in road and aqueduct building and in agriculture. Can you imagine how different, say, a place like Peru might have been had the Incas not been obliterated? Now, from this historical context, and I don't know, I mean, I mean, it seems pretty accurate when he's saying that, while the Incas were not using iron and steel necessarily, they were super advanced in road and aqueducts. And I think that that stands today. But, you often wonder, when you talk about these colonial situations, what would have happened if the Spanish had just, and the Portuguese had just, kept to themselves? I don't know. Our ancestors had a written language, but the Incas had a political and social system that had abolished those terrible famines and plagues, which at times wrought such havoc in old Europe. In old Europe. Well, it seems to me that this is old Peru. How is old Peru newer than old Europe? In architecture, a reasonable judge will yield the palm to South America, given our Great Gothic period comes after the age I have mentioned. And so far as comforts and luxuries of life are concerned, there can be no comparison. In this connection, it is but fair to admit that our forefathers built their culture on the vigorous remains of Roman civilization. After the Crusades, they were open as well to the influences of the later Greek civilizations and powerful suggestions from Oriental sources. Most of our arts, many of our forms of law, the dawn of modern science and language show traces of highly diverse and distinguished sources of origin. It is no accident that Latin, Greek, Arabic, and Hebrew are still regarded as the classical languages which lie back of our civilization. In other words, ours is a highly composite civilization with all the immense advantages of these inspirational and guiding factors. Consequently, he who would seek surely for our beginnings cannot be guided wholly by arbitrary national dates. Our civilization, to a degree, is only our own through adoption and intrusion, not through creation. That's kind of interesting. He's kind of, yeah. I mean, it seems to me that he's basically saying we conquered a bunch of people. That's why we have this stuff. We adopt and intrude and adopt. Our textile arts, especially as these are concerned with silk and cotton, were borrowed almost in toto from the East. Almost in toto from the East. You say T-O-T-O? Okay. Design, technique, even philology. Oh, philology. Indicate how vast is our debt to these alien peoples. Yet in spite of these vast advantages, in spite of the slow accretion of the ripening centuries of our culture, in some ways even today we have still to reach the achievements of this mysterious people of the Pacific slope of the Andes. Consequently, in estimating their age, we must either attribute to them miraculous mental powers in advance of our own, or acknowledge that their civilization must have been the ripened fruit of longer periods of time than any scientist has yet dared to estimate. Very interesting that he's kind of onto this. It must be remembered as well that the Incas themselves, for all of their venerable age, were newcomers in this region. Now, this is the part that maybe we have changed our understanding of this. I don't know. Their traditions, gathered by the Spanish sons of Inca mothers and written within a half century of the conquest, record their first appearance on the coast from their mountain homes of the interior. There is little doubt that they were of the same race as this still older people, but had been separated from them for many centuries and had lost all contacts with them before their exodus to the coastal regions, which occurred, according to these traditions, about 2 or 3 centuries before Pizarro and his armored men landed on their shores. Consequently, in dating these cotton fabrics, we have to take into consideration not only the age of the Inca civilization, but of this still more ancient culture. It is generally acknowledged that all the peoples of the Western Hemisphere must have come originally from Asia at a very remote time. Okay, this is the part that we have more recently busted, I guess. And I don't know how much work has been done on it, like super recently, but I do know that anthropologists and, the people that look into DNA and, the deep stuff, are saying that the people of the Western Hemisphere did not necessarily come across the Bering Strait and down into North and South America. They are saying that there could be civilizations that I don't know what's the word, sprang up from people that evolved there here in North and South America. So, and I can't speak intelligently about that because I've really only read it a couple places, but they were from scholarly, legit sources. So it's, this isn't fake news, but yeah. So I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces here. And I don't know, I'm not reading ahead here, but I'm not sure how much he's going to get into like Asia versus, yeah. I mean, I think that the old understanding of like the Bering Strait, like that was so prehistoric. They don't think they're talking about artistic and cultural influences being brought. We're talking about people that were living in the caves, no matter what continent they were from. Okay. The most conservative estimate of the age of this intrusion, assuming that any of this Bering Strait stuff is right, is 20,000 years or before the last ice age. Botanists and biologists do not agree in this opinion, but push it backward into a still more remote antiquity. Oh. Okay. These figures are at best but guesses and concern themselves with the length of time it must have taken to produce certain food plants and domesticate certain animals. We know at least that the so-called Dawn Man has never been found in the New World. There are no skeletal remains such as the famous Piltdown skull or the Java Man to push our human record backward into the pre-culture ages. Okay, Piltdown. Let's talk about him for just 1 second. So the Piltdown Man, as we know now, was a complete and utter hoax. So this is written in 1924. This is around, I think, let's see. Piltdown was discovered using them finger quotes because he wasn't really discovered. He was manufactured in I want to say it was like the 1910s. And so this being written in 1924 is still looking at that data as accurate or, not a complete hoax. I think the hoax was uncovered incrementally from the 30s through the 50s or 60s, I think. It's because what they did, the reason I know about this is, ironically, I just listened to a podcast about the debunking of the Piltdown Man, and really quickly, I'm drawing a complete blank on the guy that was responsible for this, but he was like a Cambridge archaeologist or something like that, and he claims to have discovered this skull, and Piltdown was someplace in the British Isles. He discovered the skull. It appeared to be this, ancestor, and so human ancestor. So essentially what he was trying to say was the oldest humans of civilization, the oldest human, did not come from Africa, but rather the British Isles. This is the narrative he was trying to push. And so the Piltdown skull, although it was very old, it was not as old as he was saying it was by any means. We're talking about 5,000 years old versus 25,000 years old is what he was trying to say. And all the parts of the skull, like the jaw that went with it, and then I think there were multiple others that he quote unquote found. The jaw didn't work with the head, with the cranium. And then later in the 20th century, I think they went back and examined a lot of the artifacts that were in his realm of study and found that they too were incorrectly dated. So this guy was a complete turd in terms of anthropological and archaeological research. And yeah, so anything that Morris refers to relating to the Piltdown skull is absolutely hogwash. So hopefully he's not going to mention it again. So back to the story. So no skeletal remains such as the famous Piltdown or the Java Man to push our human record backward into pre-culture ages. Consequently, when man migrated from Asia to the New World, assuming that happened, he brought with him some rudiments of culture, since such a journey presupposes at least a crude measure of social organization. But this culture must have been of a very low order indeed, some tools and knowledge of processes, perhaps a hazy understanding of agriculture, nothing more. To all intents and purposes, the ancient civilizations of the New World are indigenous, the fruit of experiences and achievements in this new home. How long, therefore, must it have taken these people to reach such a degree of culture, to have grown to maturity, and to have vanished completely? These considerations are our only guide in establishing comparative dates, which are, after which are after all of little significance in such a history, our penchant for them resting largely on the predominant part that genealogies play in the chronicles of Europe. We must measure history in Peru by cultural achievements, a far surer gauge of value. When the Incas first... so wait a minute. Before I start this, what looks like a run-on sentence, that's a page long. Let me see. Okay, we can look at that in a second. Okay, when the Incas first descended from their mountain home, they came upon the vast, deserted ruins of a vanished people. In the diamond dry air of this region, material decay is apparently inoperative. It is another and more perfect Egypt, an Egypt never in danger of an overflowing Nile. Yet the Inca vanguards, drifting to the coast, found ancient buildings among the world's most amazing architectural records in ruins, massive blocks of stone eroded even in this preserving climate. These were an agricultural people, supporting, according to estimates in ancient times, twice the modern population of the countries once included in this empire: Peru, parts of Colombia and Bolivia, and the northern sections of Chile. Agriculture was only possible through irrigation, and the only water came from the melting snows and ice of the impassable Andes. Consequently, every bit of ground where cultivation could be conducted, with the most Herculean efforts, was utilized. There are records of the natives clearing away 20 feet of sand to reach alluvial soil. 20 feet of sand? Wow, that's deep. Their grave sites were located, therefore, in particularly dry sections of the desert. Thus, delicacy of technique and brilliance of color have been preserved for us, since it was their custom to bury with the dead all personal belongings, tools, implements, and unfinished work. Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, I know, we hear about burial sites, Egypt. We hear lots about the tombs of Egypt and, all the things that were buried in those tombs. But I think for the most part, most of the time, if we're not talking about royalty, people are generally just kind of buried with, I guess if there's a spiritual or religious aspect to the burial, there's, probably something ritualistic about, whatever garment they're wearing, if any, and any kind of adornments. But, yeah, that surprises me that, everything that belonged to them is buried. Lucky for us, I suppose, or these anthropologists. It is but justice to the Spanish memory to write that the great cultures of America in the Mayan area and in Peru had already passed into decay centuries before the Spanish invasion. Against their record cannot be charged the destruction of the greatest civilizations of the New World. The peoples whom they met and conquered were themselves recent conquerors and despoilers of the older cultures. Okay. There had evidently occurred in these regions and in remote times a series of dramatic national disasters for which history can ascribe no certain reasons, and nations rich in culture, with immense material resources, high artistic and social attainments, had perished. Wattled huts had turned in the magic of man's proud genius into cities of carven stone. The rude council before the communal fire had broadened into the dignified senate, and the shaman, daubed in colored clay, festooned with the teeth and claws of animals, mumbling of the spirits of the dead, had been transformed into the magnificent priest, gorgeous in sacerdotal robes. I love these words. Sacerdotal robes, master and servant alike of a complicated ritual, all in the ordered sequence of time. And then, at the zenith of power, in the flush of pride, had come the subtle change, and all that genius had devised, all that vanity had sanctioned, all that pride had willed, vanished like some iridescent dream. Whew! I love it! That is quite a statement there. I guess even when he's not writing his erotica, he still has this flowery turn of phrase that I absolutely love. So JB says, you would think those items would be passed on to descendants instead of burying them, an important reminder of their elders. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of our mindset, right? We as a culture sometimes hand things down. I mean, I think probably this day and age because we are more of a disposable culture. Yeah, people before us, a few generations back, that's the mindset, right? You valuable resources you'd pass down. I mean, we know about if you've looked at any kind of quilt history, you know that getting back into the 19th, 18th century, people were in their wills giving quilts and clothing. So, but honestly, I think we have to look at the fact that this is just a different culture. Their beliefs would be so very, very different than what even we in our ancient history here. Ancient history, our 250 years of history here in the U.S. I mean, it's just a completely different mindset, I'm sure. So yeah, I'll have to do a dramatic reading of that last sentence at some point. I'll make it a reel on Instagram because that's some good stuff. So ancient Peru was of these vanished people. From their graves have been taken some of the loveliest of woven webs. I love how he keeps talking about woven. He keeps talking about fabric as a web. That's interesting. He keeps using that word. Here is found the complete catalog of the weaver's art, traces of each fundamental subtlety of design and construction, and it is idle to assume that such maturity could have been reached except over vast stretches of fruitful time. Here is in principle the perfect miniature history of the woven web. We could reconstruct each fabric and method of construction and decoration from the evidence of these tombs. We naturally find a different emphasis in technical processes than in Asia. In a general way, the Peruvians excel in the woven design, whereas the craftsmen of India more generally emphasize printed and dyed fabrics. But all the principal techniques occur in both areas. So before I get too much into this, let's look at this plate. So he's got some of the technology. So for this first one, you've got preparation of cotton for spinning. So it's got cotton with the seed removed, cotton carded and felted, a cone of carded fiber, a tips of cone and spindle with roving attached at the beginning, and then a famous vase showing spinning. So you hold that up. So these are all these processes of cotton, and then down here at the end, you have this vase, which we really can't see, but it may be one of the vases that was from the other day. Okay, so now next is spinning implements and a woman's work basket. And I would assume, let me see. Yeah, these things to me look like distaffs. So a distaff being the pointy thing, and on a spinning wheel, it like anchors into the spinning wheel, but it's basically like a big, like a giant toothpick that you jam your fiber on when you're going to spin it. And it's just a way of keeping it like all in one gob and not like jammed down in a basket, or it just kind of is keeping it out there easy to pull fiber off of. Let's see, this next one is types of loom and weaving implements. And then this bottom one is cylinders and stamps of terracotta used in fabric and body printing. So there's the looms, and then these are the terracotta stamps. Oh, those stamps are so interesting. Yeah, there's this one down here in the corner. Look at that. It's almost kind of like a snaky sort of looking thing, a figure eight. I don't know. It looks really cool. I like that one. Okay. There is a certain snobbery, even in the science of archaeology. Oh, really, Morris? Is there? I don't know if it's just snobbery. A careful distinction is drawn between the Old and the New World. A single tomb on the Nile, the contents of which in a general way are already well known, is opened with international complications, great and minute care as to each detail, particularly as these refer to newspaper copyrights and the division of spoils between the Egyptian government and the more or less fortunate discoverer. All of these matters are supposed to advance the sacred cause of scholarship. Now, my guess is, and I think I'm probably right, he's talking about the tomb of Tutankhamun, because this is 1924, and I don't know the exact date of King Tut's tomb, but it was in the early 20s. And people were mad about it. People were crazy about it. culturally, historically, scientifically, all the stuff. But the ancient empire of Peru, in whose sandy graves may lie the solution of one of history's most puzzling enigmas, where may repose the talisman to lead us surely insanely backward into the shadowy cycles of those earlier civilizations, upon which all modern history, language, art, and religions are built. All that we know of this has been gathered as a byproduct of the selfish quest of the mummy miners. The mummy miners! Seeking for precious metals during the 3 centuries of disorganized spoliation. Spoliation? What is that word? Since the Spanish conquest. So he's complaining about he's basically complaining about grave robbers, I think. At first I thought he was talking about the people who actually, the archaeologists that uncovered the tombs, but I think he's talking about the people who were just there to steal metal, precious metal. The fortunate custom of burying with the dead their personal belongings, unfinished work, and supplies of cornmeal, dried fish, and other foods, together with the narcotic coca leaf. Oh, so our Incan friends had a little cocaine in there. So the narcotic coca leaf and the powdered lime have given us a very accurate picture of their material culture. Well, I'm thinking maybe the powdered lime would be about dealing with the decomposition of the body and sort of mummifying it versus, I don't know. In the arts, these people achieved a great distinction. Their ceramics, in order of color and design, bear comparison with the finest examples of the potter's art from any ancient or modern people. They are expert workers in gold, silver, and bronze. They are not unskilled in the carving of precious and semi-precious stones, but it is in textiles that the chief ingenuity and artistry is shown. In the earliest graves, we find cotton, llama, alpaca, and vicuna hair wools, human hair, and a bast fiber, the agave americana. So agave americana would be what we get tequila from. But cotton was their principal fiber, and its conversion into yarn and fabrics dominates their technique. There were, in ancient times, 2 varieties of cotton in Peru. One with a fine white lint of fair length, averaging from 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 inches, high in grade and excellent in character. The other, a shorter, rougher, more uneven type of a reddish-brown color. So this reddish-brown one is interesting because that one, so there's a book, a contemporary book called Fabric by Victoria Finlay, not to be confused with Victoria Finlay Wolf, who is a quilt maker in the U.S., but this is Victoria Finlay is a writer in the UK, and she's traveled internationally looking at, different types of fiber and fabric production in different cultures. And when she was in the Andes, she met a woman who was spinning this brown cotton, and they told her, like, no, this is not for you because this is hard to spin. It's very short staple. And I think she did try it. I can't remember the details, but yeah, this was a big deal that like only the like really master spinners, even today, and I think this is like a dying art. This is one of those things, like, it's elderly women are really kind of the only ones still doing it, that there may be loss of this tradition. But it was really interesting to me because, like, reddish brown cotton, like, I did not know until very recently that was a thing. There's also, I want to say it's the Sea Island cotton that maybe has like a pastel cast to it. It's not necessarily really white. So JB says, 1922, King Tut discovered by Carter and Lord Carnarvon. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so did you see this when you were actually in the UK, JB? That would be so very cool if you did. With all of the drama and stuff associated with the Egyptian, all the stuff, repatriation, and there's just controversy around all that stuff. I still think the Egyptian stuff is so dang cool. When I was about 12, somebody gave me a book about the archaeology of Egypt, and I was just gobsmacked. I was like, I'm going to be an archaeologist one day. We see where that got me. Okay. There is a shadow of evidence that this latter, the reddish brown cotton, was an older type, since it shows less of the fine points of careful breeding. The brown cotton was said by Inca historians to have been had some special traditional significance, probably due to it being the older form. On the other hand, the Peruvians, excellent dyers, though they were in most colors, had some little difficulty with brown. The brown dyes were not as permanent, apparently, and had a deteriorating influence on the fiber. Same! I mean, brown dye is an issue because of the way that it is derived. And I mean, all the way up until like the 19th century, we have issues with fibers that have like brown or black pigments, fabrics that are just eaten through because of the mordants and things that are involved in the paint or the dye or the print. So that's so fascinating that, I mean, essentially this is like a forever thing. So JB, yes, you saw it. And current lady Carnarvon. Yeah, Carter and Carnarvon. The names I guess I am remembering. I mean, I just never paid much attention to them. Highclere Castle. So, and Drew mentions Downton Abbey, and I'm a terrible person. As much as I loved historic costuming and history, I've never watched Downton Abbey. It's been on my list forever. I just have not gotten to it. Maybe 2025 will be my Downton Abbey binge. Okay. So brown dyes were not as permanent and had a deteriorating influence. They appear to have been produced with some oxide of iron. This is, of course, merely conjecture, as no people died for eternity, but just as we do for the present moment. The fact that the older dyes have lived hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, could never have been a matter of importance to the actual dyers. The fact, however, that the great horticulturalist kept the two types of cotton plants distinct, and that this distinction exists today, is proof enough that they saw in each type some special merit. Oh, Druid, you didn't think you liked it, but it sucked you right in. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm 99% sure I can get sucked right in. Fortunately, it is possible to recreate from the actual fabrics and partially finished processes their complete technique. The preparation of the fiber was simple, although it must be admitted very thorough. The seeds were first removed by hand. There is no record of any form of gin. The lint was next separated from the natural tangles and finally paralleled or carded through pulling little bunches carefully apart and felting each little bunch of fibers into one large, soft lap. This lap, and I think today, like, if you think about wool, if you've ever done any wool felting, I think what they're talking about is like the roving, like when you kind of get it all lined up and it's kind of in a useful piece, like, to a chunk that you can make down into a piece of thread. This lap was about 4 inches wide and as long as the quantity of lint prepared demanded. It corresponds to a card lap in a modern mill. This soft ribbon of carded cotton was then broken apart in short sections and formed into a beehive cone, perhaps a foot high and 6 or 8 inches in diameter at the bottom. It was from the larger end of the comb that the fiber was drawn by the fingers in spinning, slightly twisted into a roving or partially spun thread and attached to the delicate little spindles of palm wood. In the work baskets found in all the women's graves are usually a number of the tips of these combs tightly wrapped in a cord made of the agave americana. These are evidently saved to be broken up again and formed into a large cone for spinning. We need not rely on conjecture to describe their spinning processes. The Peruvians had the highly commendable custom of representing on their pottery every act of their lives. I think the Greeks did that too, didn't they? That's how we know the Greeks were into some freaky stuff. Certain types of Peruvian jars took the place in their culture, the plastic arts assume in ours. One pottery vase illustrated in this work shows a woman in the act of spinning. The cone is held between one hand and the body, and a thread marked by a white line crosses to the hand holding the spindle. This picture is, of course, generally accurate, but it must not be forgotten that the Peruvian artist felt under no particular obligation to represent each detail of an act so common as that of spinning. It is therefore not quite as clear today as we might wish it to be, and we need a little imagination in reconstructing the actual movements. Well, now, wait a minute, Morris. Did you not just say that there is absolutely no conjecture in describing their spinning processes? What probably happened was that the fibers were first drawn out, partially wrapped around the middle of the spindle. The spindle was then rested in a shell or small wooden or pottery bowl, probably containing water to moisten the fingers of the spinner. The cone was pressed lightly against the body, and the left hand drew out more and more fibers, partially twisted them, and the right hand, operating the spindle at times, increased the twist and wound on the finished yarn. Spinning was, of course, an intermittent operation, and part of the time both hands were engaged in smoothing out the rough spots in the yarn and putting in the requisite degree of twist. I think that's why there's a distaff. Right? I mean, he's not mentioned the distaff, but maybe I misunderstood what those were in that picture, but I think those were distaffs. The true explanation of the exquisite perfection of their spinning is to be sought rather in the great skill of the craftsmen themselves than in the complexity of tools or processes. Most Peruvian yarns in fabrics are 2-ply, some fine warps are 3-ply, and I have actually analyzed 7-ply yarn. 7-ply yarn! I mean, even embroidery floss only has 6 strands, and of those, I think they're just trilobal at most. Hence, they had need for a doubler spindle. The long spindles with carving on either end were used for this purpose. 2 single yarns were wound on the doubler, but not twisted together. The act of twisting and forming the plies was performed as the yarns were unwrapped and rewound on weaving bobbins. So this 2-step process here. The carved ends prevent the yarn from slipping off and forming a tangle, just as the little beads of clay, metal, and wood prevented the single yarns from slipping off the spindles. So what I'm wondering is, maybe those things I thought are distaffs are maybe spindles? Maybe that's what they are. The pointy things. Maybe those are some type of spindle and not a distaff. I don't know. I wish one of our spinner/knitters was around. Where did I leave off here? These meridional beads. Meridional. I'm assuming he means like a meridian, the center beads. The beads were not of the same technical significance as the whorl placed at the bottom of the spindle and used in northern parts of South America and Mexico. Well, the whorl is the weight. So if you think of a hand spindle being, like a stick, and then the whorl is usually like a disc at the bottom that provides the weight, and I mean, there's physics involved in that. I think you can use a lot of different things as a spindle whorl, but there's some physics involved there. Okay. I have examined Peruvian single-ply yarns as fine as 200s in our cotton count. That is 200 times 840 yards to the pound. So 200 times 840 yards to the pound. But there seems to have been little interest among these superb craftsmen for that ethereal lightness, which distinguished certain types of cotton spinning in India. Mere lightness of weight is, however, no absolute guide as to the skill in spinning. Well, I mean, it's a pretty big one. Our finer yarns have a greater tendency to irregularity than the coarser types. In the Peruvian yarns, no matter how fine they were spun in wool or in cotton, they are the absolute perfection of the spinner's art, indicating that had the wish been present, infinitely finer counts might have been spun. The Peruvian loom has already been described in the previous chapter. Fortunately, the burial customs of these peoples have preserved for us a few actual looms, thus removing all question as to their character. Some years ago, in preparing a scientific paper for the American Museum of Natural History, I found it necessary to reconstruct in imagination their processes of tapestry weaving in which art they excelled. Curiously enough, in all their wealth of pottery pictures, there was no known example at the time of weaving to guide me. It is a natural source of gratification, therefore, to write that a vase recently discovered by Dr. Julio C. Tello of Peru, or Teo of Peru, not only justifies my conclusion, but leaves an accurate and delightful picture of this ancient and lovely craft. The types of fabric in Peru include every possible known construction, as well as certain types impossible to produce on machine looms. I have examined and dissected tapestries, double cloth, brocades, warp and weft stripes, lino, dabi patterns, crocheting, and laces. Besides these types of design incorporated into a fabric, they are not lacking in knowledge of the application of ornament to the finished web. They were skillful embroiderers, delighting in techniques rather more subtle than any we know of from Europe or Asia, and more closely allied to weaving. Painting, or perhaps stamping on fabrics, and even roller printing occur. At least we find small stamps and cylinders of terracotta. These may, however, have been used in decoration of the human body. However, natives a century ago used to dig up the cylinders and print them on cotton fabric. Oh, that's interesting. Or cotton cloth. The knowledge of weaving techniques and subtleties must have been universal, since even in the coarsest webs, we find the weaver passing easily and gracefully from one technique into another in the same loom piece. In all my experiences with fabrics, I have never examined any collection which showed so perfect a sense of value of texture and color, or contained so few technical mistakes. Their skill in using crepe yarns is truly amazing. One particularly fine voile of brown cotton, with interesting embroidered motifs, is a particularly lovely specimen. Well, I mean, a voile is very fine. So, I mean, we're talking about some like extremely, extremely fine threads. So, I don't know what he's talking about. They don't make microscopically fine thread. It is in the form of a kind of poncho or blouse, and since the Peruvians were a dark-skinned people, this brown veil with its brightly colored embroidered figures must have been most effective. I have examined tapestries and brocades where between 200 and 300 weft yarns have been inserted to the inch in complicated patterns. Each of these designs had to be carefully calculated in advance, and the least mistake would have upset the entire calculations and created a confusion in pattern. I have never seen an example of misweave in any of the finer Peruvian fabrics. Naturally, in such immense collections as have been recovered from these graves, we find all degrees of skill, and obviously some of the craftsmen were inexperienced. But as a general rule, the teaching must have been sound and the pupils receptive. At the time of the Spaniards, there were great convents of women. I just lost my space. Great convents of women who were compared by the historians to the Vestal Virgins of Rome. One of their chief functions was to produce for the Inca and the powerful nobles their beautiful garments of state. And it is from these perfect weavers that we get the most exquisite textures. Why is it always women in convents that are going blind making... I mean, you hear the stories about the blind nuns of Flanders, or I don't know. I'm probably messing that up, but I mean, there were nuns that created lace in Europe. So that's, not only are women forced into some of this stuff, but it's like, not only are we gonna make you responsible for making this stuff, but we're gonna lock you in a building and a religious practice to do it. So. In one of their forms of tapestry, at each change of color in the weft, the yarns are interlocked. This kind of weaving has no parallel that I am familiar with. They had a way, too, of outlining figures with black yarns made from human hair, and these yarns do not run at right angles as in most weaving, but in a more or less eccentric way, following the vagaries of patterns. Only an extremely skillful people could have taken such liberties with the basic principles of weaving. And I'm kind of like, I can't picture what this looks like, but I'm guessing I have done a little bit of tapestry work when I was in college. And my guess is, because, you build a tapestry like this. My guess is this might have been something that after the tapestry itself was woven, that the human hair maybe could have been like embroidered almost like in there. And it's just a guess without actually looking at this. One technique I have reserved until the last. In India and Java, in the Philippine Islands, in the Gobi Desert, and in many other parts of the world, through related techniques, there is a process of applying design known as resist dyeing, or more familiarly as batik. Herodotus in 450 BC describes this art among the peoples of the Caspian Sea. I did not know that. It appears in the blue and white resist prints of Italy and Central Europe, and is a part of the technical equipment of every first-class fabric printing concern today. The process, in its simplest form, is painting on a fabric with molten beeswax and then dipping the fabric in a dye bath, which does not dissolve the wax. The wax offers a resistance to the penetration of the color, and when the wax is removed after the dye bath, design has been produced through the contrast between the undyed sections of the fabric and the dyed. It is very difficult to say how the discovery of such a process could have been mere accident. It demands, even in its simplest form, an orderly sequence of processes, which must have been thought out in advance and deliberately performed with a fixed purpose in mind. To find such a process in Peru, evidently thousands of years old, was one of the most surprising and confusing discoveries I made in my research into Peruvian fabrics. To be sure, in the pottery of Central America occurs an analogous technique known as lost colorware. Here, a vessel is first dyed in rich red, then a design is painted on it in hot wax using a chewed stick for a brush. The vessel is then immersed in a black dye and the wax removed in boiling water, and consequently a design in black and red is created. It is, of course, possible that the fabric arts here borrowed from the ceramic art, although in the natural order of development, the fabric arts are the elder. It is equally possible that this craft was transferred originally from fabrics to ceramics, and the fabric arts lost in the moist climates in which we find the pottery vessels. I do not know of any lost colorware in prehistoric Peru. It is vain to attempt to describe the Peruvian palette of colors. Reds, purples, and different shades of blue, green, and brown predominate, but in such endless variety of tone and shade as to be impossible to limit by meaningless names. They have no comparison in our modern color scheme and belong in the same distinguished category as the colors of early Persia or of the reminiscence of the arts of Asia Minor found in the Egyptian tombs. They were adept at all types of design which originated in the technique of weaving, and their conventional forms are varied, well balanced, and must represent not only a great time in development, but a high appreciation of the sense of values and balance. It is possible in their conventions of animals to identify most of their complicated symbols. The cat, the bird, the fish, and the human form predominate, although the llama and the monkey, the deer, and even the serpent at times occur. We may see in these highly developed figures a reminiscence of the time when their art was based on propitiatory magic. Propitiatory. I think I'm going to have to go through this book later on and highlight all the big words that I need to look up just to be sure I understand what they mean. I think it's interesting in describing the animals. The cat. Yeah, that's interesting. Cats worm their way into all kinds of things. All primitive peoples are more affected by animal than floral life. Are they? Okay. And the Peruvians are no exception. Floral forms, so persistent in our arts since the Renaissance, have little place among the older peoples. Such floral forms as do occur are probably in the nature of prayers for an abundant supply of water from the melting snow of the Andes, and never occur without roots attached. It is easy to understand how a people, armed only with bronze spears and clubs and slings, have a great respect for a full-grown jaguar or puma. Indeed. Before society was fully organized, these cats must have been a serious menace to life, and no doubt rude, realistic pictures of them were made in many materials in attempts to claim relationship with them and hence immunity from their destructive powers. Okay, so we're seems like we're definitely talking about big cats here. We're not talking about little house cats. The Peruvians were not in any sense a maritime people. Still, on frail rafts of rushes, they made journeys to the coastal islands for the guano used as fertilizer, and they were fishermen as well. Consequently, the booming surf of the Pacific must have been a constant dread, and the fish forms may represent propitiatory offerings, again, there's that word, to the malignant spirits of the deep. Certain it is that many fish forms made from thin silver have been found on the islands under 30 feet of guano. I wonder how long it takes birds or bats to make 30 feet of poop. Inquiring minds. I don't know if you're up for that one, Druid, but something tells me that if Sherlock was here, she'd find out for us. It would take a colony of birds. See, that's the X, and then the... If you ever watch this Sherlock, no, I'm only jesting with love in my heart. The bird had perhaps a double significance. A desert people living in the open spaces on the coast were the victims of great and terrific windstorms, and the bird may have been seen, therefore, the symbol of the air. On the other hand, the returning birds, or rather the restoration of the mating plumage of the birds, may have had some association in their minds with the melting snows on the ice caps of the Andes and the water supply that brought fertility and color to their lives. The human form is seldom shown except as an armed man, in many cases bearing the gruesome trophies of battle, the severed heads of his enemies, and here we have an expression of the fear of warfare as an incentive to design. An incentive? Thank you, Druid. Let's see. Propitiatory, having power to atone for or offered by way of expiation or propitiation. So it's atone. It's to atone. So propitiatory magic is like appeasing the gods, I'm guessing. You guys think that might be? No worries about the guano. We'll save that. Okay. When, however, a people vary their symbolical forms and fetish ornaments and develop them into a highly complicated rhythmical composition, it is a fair assumption that they have an aesthetic rather than a sacerdotal SACERDOTAL. I guess this means sacred. This is sacred is the word. Morris, come on. So an aesthetic rather than a sacred significance. I'm going to go ahead and replace that one. Okay. I have in mind one particular piece of embroidery from an old Inca shawl, the border of which shows the panther god decorated with human heads as the symbol of human sacrifice. Okay, I knew this. The Incas had gods that were like panthers and things like that. Each figure is a rhythmical repetition to the succeeding and each in a distinct color combination, yet all in perfect harmony. If the puma god really held any terrors for the artist that created this design, it must be admitted that in the interest in composition and color, he had taken great liberties with this object of his fear and worship. And that is Peru. Now, there's a couple plates I skipped over, so I want to show those really quickly. Next time, we will look at India. All right, so let me flip back here to these plates. Okay, so the first one is a Vicuna wool tapestry with cotton warps showing rare plant forms. So that's this one. So those are rare plant forms, I guess. And by the way, a Vicuna is a little creature that's like a llama or an alpaca. It's just a different type of little pack animal. Sacerdotal, relating to or denoting a doctrine which ascribes sacrificial functions and spiritual or supernatural powers toward you. Okay, so sacred. It means sacred. So this is a Peruvian mummy with a false head and great charms. Oh my goodness. So that's this middle picture. This right here. A Peruvian mummy. Doesn't look anything like the Egyptians. So this is a detail of Inca embroidery showing puma god with human heads. Okay. So that's this here. Okay. Number 4 is a detail of fine brown cotton voile with conventional motives, which I think we've determined motives means motif. So that's this. And that, I mean, that could almost be like a modern fabric even. See, something holy or sacred, especially if it's related to priest, is sacerdotal. Okay. Some sacerdotal duties may include celebrating mass and hearing confessions. Okay, so that is how it relates in modern times. But yeah, I mean, sacred. I think sacred covers it. Let's see, number 5. Rare example of Peruvian lace. Now this is interesting. He did mention the crocheting and the lace making, and that looks like modern knitted lace or bobbin lace to me. I mean, that's interesting that they had that technology. They knew how to do that. Let's see. Number 6, it says leno weaving showing geometric patterns through crossing warps. That's interesting. Crossing warps. So that is this. And to me, it looks like it's got holes in it. But it's definitely like you could see a design there. And it does have like a sort of a diagonalness about it. Let's see. Number 7 is Inca embroidery of a puma god with human sacrifices. Okay, that one looks a little bit more like what I would have imagined. Oh gosh, I wish I could see these in color. I bet they're just really, really amazing in color. Number 8 is, let's see, double cloth in bird design. This one's interesting because it looks, I mean, it's got like a repeat there. That's this. And then this one is another leno fabric, however that is pronounced. And it says leno cloth in bird design with tapestry border. And then this last one is brocade pattern in fish convention. So this looks more symbolic to me, but you can see this is, I mean, they're fishy looking. It's definitely fit like fish. So those are interesting. Oh gosh, I wish I could see these things in color. I wonder how much, let's see. I think a lot of this stuff is from the Natural History Museum, so maybe at some point I could search. Yeah, these are all from the American Museum of Natural History, so maybe can look those up maybe next time. Look and see, does any of this stuff still exist? Can we see anything like this in online? That would be so cool if they did. If they had a Morris DeCamp like collection you could look at. Okay, so this last one, let's see. These are technical method of applying ornament to woven texture. Okay, so this first one says types of conventionalized fish design. This is another one. I so wish doesn't necessarily have to be in color, but if I could only see it bigger. Let's see. Number 2, brocaded cotton cloth with cat's head pattern. Okay. I guess I can see it. I guess that's supposed to be a cat head. That's sort of 3 diamonds. I mean, 2 eyes and a nose or ears, I guess. I could see it. Very ancient poncho of vicuna wool with 3-ply cotton warp. And I mean, that's very poncho looking. Number 4 is unfinished fabric with brocade designs. So it looks like that's something that's been taken off of a loom. So it's got all this up here that's not finished. Number 5 and 6. So number 5 is conventionalized bird design, and number 6 is conventionalized cat design. Okay, the cat ones are fun. Oh my goodness. It's so tiny and faint though. I'm hoping that you can actually see this. So number 6 are the cats, and number 5 are the birds. I'm going to see if I can get my phone to take a little better picture of that. And I'll show you on, or if I can find it, I'll show you on Thursday. Okay. Number 7 is a pottery vase showing woman wearing tied and dyed poncho. So the woman is the vase. The vase is the woman. You can kind of see a face up here on the neck of the vase. Number 8. Double cloth bag used for coca leaf. So it's where you keep your cocaine. And that's that. Just a pretty little bag. Number 9, types of conventionalized human form designs. So again, it's kind of like the cats. Maybe a little hard to see, but they're interesting looking human faces. 10, brocade on lino weave. Not super easy to see that one at all. Number 11 is double cloth with figures of men. That one's easier to see. Number 12 is lace bag of Maguey fiber, Maguey. He hasn't mentioned that, so I don't know what that is. But it's interesting. It's very lacy looking. And then finally, painted or stamped designs on cotton. And that's this whole bottom piece. So, yes, I do believe that I need to give myself the homework of going to the American Museum of Natural History website and finding out if they have anything online that I could search and look for. I will do that. And let me make a note of that. All right. Oh, Druid. Okay. So in essence, all I don't know how this is pronounced. Maguey. It's probably Maguey. All magueys are agaves, but not all agaves are magueys. The term is used more broadly to refer to any plant in the agave genus, while agave is used more specifically to refer to a certain species within that genus. Okay. So the agave is the umbrella term, whereas the maguey is a type of agave. Okay. Yeah. And my assumption is, I mean, I know what agave looks like. my guess is it's probably pretty nondescript, like just a big plant, a big desert plant that you can process into some type of fiber or alcoholic beverage. Well, guys, like I said, I'm gonna pack up a little bit early today because I got to get on the road, and it is cold and rainy here, as you know. We can't count on weather to be maguey. Okay, thank you. Oh, I love a pronunciation. I like to not have to guess because I'm always guessing wrong. Maguey. Okay. Yeah. So as any time I have to travel, of course, the cold, the rain, something's gonna come up. So I have to battle that. Yeah. So like maguey. I like it. So tomorrow night, Jill and I have, I believe we're probably looking at, she and I talked about it this weekend, and now I'm going, oh, she and I are talking about, I think, an exhibition. Yes, we've got a little bit of recording in the bag for next week. But we do have, I think one tonight that's an exhibition, or tomorrow night that's an exhibition. In any event, I hope you will join us tomorrow night if you are available. Quilt Nerding is on YouTube at, we've moved the time to 7 p.m. Eastern. So you can find us there, Quilt Nerding. And I'll be back Thursday like a normal. I've got a family wedding to go to this week. So I'm like, Heritage of Cotton is like my respite. But yes, thank you guys so much. I hope you have a fantastic week until I see you again. Stay warm if it's cold. Stay dry if it's raining and snowing. All the things. And as always, you guys, I value you. I appreciate you so much. I couldn't do this without you. So I will leave you there, and I will see you very soon. So, mwah! Take care, guys.